All right, let's come to order, please.
Need a gavel.
I know I do. Good evening, everybody. It is 7:16 p.m. Let's begin by quickly going around the table for introductions.
Right, David Baker, Superintendent of Schools, Windsor Southeast.
Heidi Remick, Weathersfield Board and SU Board.
Sarah Taylor, Heartland Board, SU Board.
Nancy Pedrick, West Wind, where out? Mount Escutney School Board and SU.
It's got a nice ring to it.
Yes.
Well done. Sean Whalen, Weathersfield Board, SU Board.
Billy Yates, we are still Albert
Yes, you are, actually.
Oh,
For a couple more.
Board for a while, but also on the
West Windsor and Windsor. and-
Mount Scottney Board and SU Board and Certified Sith Knight.
Beth Carter, Windsor Board, Mount Scottney School District Board in the future, and then Superintendent Board.
And I'm Scott Richardson from Heartland Board.
Jackie Antonovich, Weathersfield School Board,
SU Board.
SU Board.
SU Board.
Nikki Bach, Heartland Board, SU Board.
Thank you, everybody. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes from our October 1st meeting?
Yes.
So I will entertain a motion.
I would move that we approve the minutes from the October 1st meeting.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes from the October 1st meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain, I wasn't here.
Thank you. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda tonight?
Yeah, we have a couple of appointments. We need to add Tina Canfield, who is the HR director that was authorized, I think, a couple of months ago by this board. She's been hired, and the other one is Aurora Paquette, paraprofessional. So we can do those at the end.
Is there any public topics for discussion that aren't on the agenda? Hearing none, let's jump right into the budget conversation.
Okay, so the Supervisory Union Budget Committee has met again, and a couple of things have happened even since that time. And we basically still have three issues before us that impact the budget in a different way than perhaps in the past. One is the continuation of that HR position in the business office. That's an added expense of in the neighborhood of $60,000 to $70,000. I think Ed would have the exact number. The second issue is whether or not we want to centralize the equipment in Larry's budget. That's the last piece of technology that needs to be centralized, and there is some rationale that we've given at the committee level and at this board level around centralizing that in terms of economies of scale and over time trying to save some money. And then the third piece is with respect to the final numbers that we just received. Karen did finally finish the service plan, which was a lot of work, and the service plan is a point in time when you look at how much staff you have in special ed, the benefits associated with that staff, how many other resources are being expended on our special education students, everything from behavior interventionists that we contract out for to speech language services, occupational therapy services, and that is a tedious process. What we had done at our last couple of board meetings with you as we prepared for budget is we just took last year's numbers and we added we increased wages by a certain percent and we increased some of the other lines by a small percent. But we knew, and I think we had said that was not going to be an indication of what the actual special ed costs were until we had those numbers in and we had those revenue numbers in. So we do have those now. And so with the centralization of equipment in technology and with the HR position and with the new special ed numbers. And I'm glad you're all sitting down, but we need to take a look at where we stand in terms of increases to assessments for next year. And Ed, I don't know, can you throw that up on the screen so we can look at that and get a sense of that? And certainly we're here to, and prepared to ask and answer questions if you would like.
So I'll hand this out as well.
Right, we can just pass it around, pass it out, pass it around.
But one for Sean.
Thank you.
The first two sections, right, as Ed's passing it out, technology and central office, you are aware of those increases. The technology assessment includes taking equipment out of your local budgets and putting it into the SU budget. So it adds about a 39% increase overall to technology. The central office assessment is up about 10%, which is essentially that HR position and associated benefits. And
No,
then,
actually, it's not that. The HR position is $36,000.
okay, thank you. And then the special education, the actual concrete numbers, and again, you have to remember with special education, it's a point in time, and that could still go up, it could come down. Families could move out, families could move in, and as you can see, it is a substantial increase of 25.76%. Early childhood is our only program that is going down. But Ed, is there anything you needed to talk through on this in terms of,
Well, when we came to you before, we basically presented a budget that was
special education
special
budget?
education budget of 5.798. The actual service plan is 6.82. So the special ed budget is up $1 million, $1,021,000. So what translates is then you have to figure out what revenues you're going to do to offset the number. So we've got an estimated FY20 idea B that some of the costs will be taken up. Look, these are grants, the mainstream grant, mainstream local, the estimated state place, the estimated extraordinary, an excess cost revenue that takes it down to $5,012,000, and then this year they just gave us the FY18 reimbursement rate of 55.84, so you multiply that number after you've taken all these reimbursements out, you multiply 5,012,986 by that percentage, which is 5.84, and you come up with 2,799,163. So that's the amount that we can expect to get back from the state. And then you've got money that you call extraordinary. So the total extraordinary budget, that's students whose expenditures are going to be over $50,000 or $60,000 in this given year. Any expense over $60,000 is now eligible for a reimbursement at 90%, but how you arrive at the eligible amount is you take the total budget and you subtract out the total threshold, and how you arrive at the threshold is we know there are 20 students that have been labeled extraordinary. So we take that $60,000 and we multiply it by 20, which is 1.2 million. And we come up with 834,859, which comes over here, multiply that by 90%, and you come up with $750,743.10. So then what happens at this point is you then take it down to here, and you take the original service plan, which was 6.82 million, you take out the mainstream, you take out the revenue that you expect for the regular reimbursement, the extraordinary reimbursement, and the excess cost money, and you come up with 2,706,626.68, which is then or put into the assessment formula right here when you're talking about the special ed. And then you use the FY19, because we won't get FY20 equalized pupil until later, to come up with the percentages for each school. And as you can see from what my handout was, for special education, Weathersfield School is going to be up 136,000. Mount Scottney School District 242,570 and Heartland 175,449 for a total increase of $554,482. Yes.
Is Mount Scottney School
The
District?
combination.
Yes, but then do you separate that out, or do you just have it to each school, or what?
Well, I know what their, I know what the assessment is because,
And we've broken out before, right?
yeah, I broke it out, but what it is essentially is you just take
Percentage.
the percentages from West Windsor and you add it to Windsor, and then you multiply the total number by that number. So the percentage is 44.05%, which is the 34 and the 9.56 added together.
Okay.
But remember, as the new Mount Scottney School District is formulating their budget, that'll be a combined number, that'll be a cost in that budget, that'll be associated with that new district. And then when we get to the bottom line on the tax worksheet, which doesn't come to us until December, the only thing that will augment that number will be the CLA, because Windsor will have its own CLA, common level of appraisal for taxes, and West Windsor will have their own CLA. So Ed will apply that CLA to that bottom line tax number, and that's what will generate Mount Scottney's taxes, or, the Mount Scottney School District's impact on taxes for West Windsor and for Windsor. I was always trying to stay eternally optimistic about special education expenditures. You do know that we were, before revenues, expenditure-wise, we were over last year in FY18. We reported out about a $500,000 deficit, right? So we knew that the expenses, we've been telling this board and all the local boards that our IEP count has been up, in the last 6 years, up from 153 to 230. What Karen told me today is that essentially, even just in the last year, we've got 40 additional IEPs. And right now, we have referrals. How many referrals?
25.
We have 25 referrals for IEPs in the hopper. I mean, the bottom line is, the special services piece and the support services piece is increasing. And until the state can come to the table with a better reimbursement, or the federal government can step up to the table, it does fall, the bottom line of that falls to the local property taxpayers. Absent that 55 point, and by the way, that 55% state reimbursement, last year was 56 plus. So they're going in the wrong direction in terms of what now that's absent that new formula that's coming down the road 2 or 3 years from now, that's going to give us a block grant. But even that, I mean, I shudder to think what that block grant's going to be, and then how we're going to have to augment that to service our kids. I mean, we went over line by line today with Karen, and we could certainly, if you don't want to approve this tonight, we could meet with the SU committee and go line by line, but you'll find that all of the services that are in that service plan and everything that's driving those increases you see right there, which are primarily special ed increases other than, that HR increase and Larry's increase, the bottom line is, all of those are required and essential to the individual education plans of those kids we serve in this district. We went through every transportation line, we went through every service line, and that's just the way it is.
So David, do we have a breakdown of that assessment? Because that was my question, I think, 2 times ago, is there not something we can do to bring it back, the money that we spent back? And I know it's not easy, and to bring it back into under our roof, right? Because we spend a lot of services outside. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I'm just curious to know, it's a lot of money. So is there not a way to just bring it back in-house? Because we do a lot of outsourcing and subcontracting and all the, trucking people every which way across the state.
With things like transportation. Well, I will tell you, that's something that Karen has been talking to Ed and I about, is are there ways, for example, with transportation, that's up over about $100,000 proposed for next year. It's up this year, and that's because you do have to privately contract a lot of this transportation. I mean, we haven't made any final decisions, but Karen has thought about, whether or not it would be, she knows districts that lease a van or lease 2 vans, hire a driver and, and do save a little bit of money. I mean, I think we do need to look at that, right? Most of the other contracted services, though, are contracted services that have to come from people who are highly skilled in those areas, like speech language pathologists and like occupational therapists and like the psychological testing that goes on. We do have our own psychologist who does a lot of that work, but sometimes Karen has to turn to an outside vendor to keep up with those kinds, because every one of those referrals, if it's going to turn into an evaluation plan, has some level of psychologist involved with it as we go forward. Now, the piece that Ed kind of went over tonight is the revenue piece. That's the piece that constantly remains a moving target. We were on the phone today or Ed was, with the Agency of Education trying to affirm that we've figured out the revenue side of this correctly. And we're not going to talk a lot about this tonight because Ed told me I shouldn't, but we also got the last special education reimbursement check for last year, the year that drove the deficit, right? And Ed hasn't had a chance to sort that out yet, but on the surface, it looks like we got more than he anticipated. So it looks like some of those deficits that are being carried right now in the Mount Scottney School District, for example, may be, and I like this word tonight, may be augmented by additional revenues. But he said, and by the way, he just got that check. Was it today or Friday, Ed?
I just got the stuff today.
Today. So that's why he told me, let's not get into any detail on that. And part of the problem is, this is all projection. It's a moment in time. We
We do know that the special education budget is rising exponentially.
Right.
And that's my
Across the
question.
state, by the
So
way.
seeing this, right, so seeing this right here, and that's the question, right, looking at what I don't know from this Ed.
So this is just what the service plan looks like. This is what I was carrying as of the last budget meeting that we had over here. This is essentially giving everybody the wage increases and the benefit increases, the 11.5% increase in health insurance and all the other things that we've gotten from the state and from our vendors to know where we're gonna be in health. And the wages, again, we're in a contract year, so we're trying to negotiate, so we had to make some assumptions there. But this is what I came up with, and this is what the actual plan was, and this is the difference. And the reason that this is pea green kind of color is this 61.5 is that my number included summer wages, difficulty of duty, and Karen put that in here, which is in purchase services. So somewhere in here is the 61.5, and then in here there's BIs from, this is where we're contracting people. We're
Okay, that was
contracting
my question. Which line items are contract people?
right here. This $451,260 is HCRS, health service, what is it called?
Healthcare and rehabilitation
Yeah,
services.
it's our mental health agency.
So that
essentially.
is for BIs,
Some of it is for them.
Some of that's.
and then there's a bunch of other agencies
Yeah,
that
right,
we contract
right.
with.
Sign up on
So
shift.
that's that, and then, tuition's up because there's more kids that are being sent out. Excess cost is up because schools are, I can let Karen go through this if you want to, Karen.
Well, that's what we spent time today going through, but you certainly can kind of highlight some of the things that have been increasing over the last, year or so.
Sure, people, do you want me to do that?
I know.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think it is.
It's pretty self-explanatory. I think one of the things that Beth said is what can we bring in-house, and then you look at the, the 560 tuition, and you look at something like that, and to bring that back down, you would actually have to create programs, and those have their own costs and their own issues.
And the majority of the tuition is schools that are called collaboratives, which means that, regionally, we've already developed ways to try to cut back on creating the wheel in every single
Right,
school.
right, yeah.
We've got collaboratives that help to save some of that build up and break down costs when you don't have enough kids to do what you thought you needed to have the program for.
I mean, all of a sudden, you think, well, we can bring this into the district, but then you've got to hire the people to run it
And set the system up.
and set the system up and have it administered.
Space.
We've done that in the past. We've set up programs before Karen was here where we had a program in Weathersfield that was intensive needs essentially. And what we did was we was set up for, say, 10
Right,
students.
and then next year's just.
Yeah.
And then you got two,
exactly.
you got the
And
cost.
Yeah, okay.
We had the staff for 10 and all of a
Right,
sudden,
you need them.
we didn't need them.
Right.
I just wanted to, right, pressure test, have we looked into
Yeah,
that?
no,
Because it's
no.
only gonna go up.
Believe me, constantly. And I will tell you, as we just said, and, you know, some of you work in other districts, this is across the state. I mean, this phenomena is happening across the state, and the cost containment is something we're gonna have to address, I think, at the state level, quite frankly. I mean, I'm not trying to push it off or throw anybody under the bus, but I will tell you, you know, there's a certain level of legality here that's involved that makes it very difficult. When I got that number on, and I just got it on Friday or Thursday from Karen when I signed off on the service plan, you know, all weekend, you know, your heart sinks, you're sick, but I mean, what do you do? It is what it is, and we could inflate the revenue number, we could deflate, because it is just a projection, maybe a couple of kids will move out, but I think that it's not realistic, it's not as accurate as a moment in time, and I think, you know, we could be coming back here next year with another deficit, you know, or you know.
Well, David, I think what you're alluding to there, if we did that, it really shies away from a level of transparency.
That's what I
It's
think.
really
I think this is and we talked a lot about this today because you know, I mean, we not only do we have to stand before this board and get some level of public support, albeit separate and apart from whatever we do with technology or the HR position, but, you know, I know that, you know, when it comes to the SU budget, I'm gonna have to stand before the public and talk about that. And I've asked Karen to, you know, to try to succinctly get together some of these increases in you know, in placements and staffing. But it's a very fragile conversation because you don't want to make it so specific that people can begin to identify certain families and certain kids. You know, you start talking about a kid that you're sending someplace, and, you know, our communities are very small, and you just, you know, it's hard. So, you know, Karen's going to figure out a way at our town meetings to sort of globally and generically talk about this, because if I were a taxpayer sitting there and I saw $1 million increase from year to year in special education, you know, I'd have two questions. What was the benefit of centralizing to begin with? And the second question would be, what's up with that increase? And I think we've got to answer that to some degree, and that'll be our job to do at town meeting.
Can I just say two quick things? One thing is, I just want to point out that 20% of our student population, K through 12, is on an IEP. The second thing I want to point out is, in response to the question about trying to do things in-house, we do try to do that, and the psychological services line is because we're trying to have a couple of behavioral interventionists who are actually on staff instead of contracting out. It's not less expensive, but we're trying to increase in-house capacity.
So this in-house capacity, are you using it as
Prevention.
preventative?
It's prevention of students who need that level of service so that they don't need to have an IEP
To
to
go
say, we want this kiddo to go somewhere else. Right. And I don't want them to go anywhere else. The reason it took so long for me to pull this together is that the numbers were we looked at 240 IEPs in order to come up with these one by one by one.
And by the way, to manage those 240 IEPs, that's exactly why, spread out, by the way, all over the place, because remember, a lot of these IEPs we're servicing are in the case of West Windsor, they're in middle schools where those kids are, who have been tuitioned out. They're in high schools out in the hinterlands from the choice districts. We are still responsible for the programs of those kids. We get the excess cost bill back. We have to have an LEA that goes to all of those IEP meetings, and that's, you know, and again, we talk about this every year. It's a cost of doing business in a district that has a couple of, in a SU where a couple of districts have choice. It's a real management, it's a real, management issue, and I think.
That's right here.
Yeah, and I think that's the excess cost piece. That's
No,
some,
I'm sorry,
right.
that's tuition. but,
That's tuition, right.
Go to
Excess cost is right here.
below.
Right.
That's up 119.
Yeah, that's up over $100,000, just an excess cost. That's cost to kids who are in tuition, who are our high school kids that are tuitioning to other high schools, and our junior high in the case of West Windsor that are tuitioning to other junior high schools. That's that excess cost number. And we don't have a lot of control over that. They bill us out for that. It is what it is. We don't know what we're gonna negotiate for wages. We do know the benefit number because we've gotten the word from our healthcare provider.
We have an estimate of the revenue.
But we have an estimate of the wages,
No, we have an estimate of health and dental in those, and the other ones,
Right.
as we get closer to. the-
Yeah, we'll get it more exact.
accurate
Right.
numbers.
But what I'm saying is, we have not completed negotiations with our staff yet, so, what we have in there is a projection. I mean, I think, and we talked about this last time, I think, the best we could ask for in terms of tonight's meeting is, we would love a level of, at least a tentative approval of this budget tonight, so that we can then go back to getting your local budget set. I think in December, we may have to take it up, once you've had time at the local level, we've talked about this, we may need to revisit, some of this. I think it is what it is. I mean, the tech assessment and we talked about this before, and the HR position is a one-time, year-to-year increase in cost. I mean, that's gonna eventually start to stabilize. We can't make those same promises with special education. I mean, the costs may continue to escalate. We're gonna have to continue to do our best to try to contain those costs, but I wish I had the magic bullet for that, and so does every other superintendent around the state. It's
So-
just not there.
Yeah, so, a couple things I want to point out. One is, and it's been pointed out before, is that the increase in the tech department, that directly comes off.
It's zeroed out.
It's zeroed out, for the most part,
In
from
your
the local
budgets.
budgets.
Right.
It's zeroed out completely from the local budget.
Okay, well, that's something different than what was.
Yeah, there'll be nothing in the local budget.
Oh, okay, I
Yes.
thought you meant it balanced out. It
No.
doesn't perfectly balance
No,
it,
it
but
does
it's
not
zeroed
balance
out,
out.
so
It's
it's.
zeroed out.
Right, it's taken out of the local budgets, so it's just, the increase in this is not just a complete increase. It
That's
is-
correct.
It's.
Which is
it's
why,
offset.
until we start developing those local budgets, we're not gonna know the absolute impact on your local budgets.
So that was kind of the reason why, right, I think when we had the meeting, right, that was why the question of, can we, while we say tentatively yes, but when we go back to the local budgets, can we see, while it may not be zero line item, right, is it really gonna be justifiable, right? I mean, I think that was the
Correct.
question, Nikki, that, right,
Correct.
we asked, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
the
we don't wanna,
idea-
right, you don't wanna go back and forth every year, but at
No.
least
Right.
say,
No.
okay,
But-
it's it's a 200K increase at the SU level, at least within the individual budgets, do we get to
Right, what does that look
removal of
like?
150K?
Right. Right.
To justify
What's the
it.
term we used?
The idea is that we have discretionary, if we put technology into the SU budget, we have discretionary funds now in the SU budget. Because I don't view the special education assessment or the central office assessment, once we agree on the numbers.
It's not very discretionary.
It's not discretionary spending. None of it, to date, none of our SU spending I've deemed is discretionary. Once we add technology, it's discretionary. And so I feel like our previous mode of saying, okay, we approve the SU budget, we're done, we need to be able to go and look at our local budgets and because we have discretionary spending in the SU budget, if we do this, then we need to have the ability to come back as a board and say, wait, this isn't gonna work.
Scott?
Yeah, just before we get too far away from the, what was really a special ed discussion, I think. It's good to see that the percentages estimates for 2020's budget are not, don't change from the percentage assessments from the 19 budget that we're living in. I mean, what it tells me is that community size, student population size within each district is expected to be
Mhm.
consistent. So
Mhm.
is there anything you could, I would appreciate just a minute on, again, how and how often you look at, what's the number, equalized pupil numbers, to come up with this kind of an estimate for the 2020.
Right, well, that equalized pupil number, remember, Scott, comes to us really from the state, and this is last year's equalized pupil. Ed doesn't have,
It's this year's.
that's right, the FY19, it's not the year we're budgeting for. We will get that one, though, usually what, in December, Ed?
Well, in a normal year, I would say yes, but because the state has decided to, along with their other 7 software initiatives, they've done they've taken a new approach to the census, okay? And that census is a part of equalized pupil, and I think Larry can speak to the fact that the census conversion hasn't gone very well, so I can't tell you, and Bill can tell you that he's been involved in it. I don't know whether that information, we've been getting emails saying the information's been delayed, they're still trying to figure numbers out. So, to answer your question, Scott, I usually don't get the CLA numbers from the state in time to include it in the next year's budget. So that's why I'm always using a CLA number from the prior year. And the reason the numbers stay relatively the same is because the state has a formula that is supposed to smooth it, right? So when they smooth it, it may or may not look like your actual count, up or down. There's poverty rates, and everything gets factored into that number. Interestingly enough, it is a number that the state has looked at as eliminating, because they feel that if you used the royal numbers, then you would be budgeting a little differently. But again, that's something that's out there in the future. But I don't know what the 20 numbers
That is an interesting thing to bring up for discussion. I mean, just to know. But I think that the SU board decided several years ago to look at equalized pupil for the reason of, for the consistency aspect of that within the budget process. And then, I don't know, just to point out that it looks like it's A, doing what it's supposed to do, and B, it speaks to me that our communities are quite similar, that these numbers don't change. Oh, I wish 18 was on there, but as far as I remember, they're very similar to that.
Well, I have.
No, but that equalized pupil, you're right, that helped to at least stabilize those increases. Had we not done that, then what you would have seen in those difference columns is you would have seen somebody up 400, 500,000, somebody down, a certain amount. This has at least got everybody, and when you look at school size or district size, it's about, it looks about even, right? Weathersfield's our smallest district. Their increase is about 210, Heartland the next larger, and then Mount Scottney the next larger. I mean, it follows some logical pattern. The way we used to do it, it wouldn't have. It would have been by where those kids lived at that particular moment who were getting those services. And that was, the day we did the budget, they might have lived in Weathersfield, and the next day they would have lived in Heartland. And it was just crazy the way we used to do it.
One last thing, if I still have the floor, please. And I wish we could, I'm really keen to hear more about why something within the technology assessment would now be deemed discretionary if it's a component of our operations that's integral to teaching and delivering curriculum. And so I understand that we talked at the last SU meeting about including more of what was happening in the satellite districts within the SU assessment. So how does that piece become discretionary spending in that money?
I agree with you on most things, but I think we can look at it as discretionary spending in the same way as we look at purchasing cars in our community for the nation. So when the economy of the U.S. goes down, people buy fewer new cars, but eventually down the line, they have to buy those new cars. So it's sort of putting off the expense to another day, which I don't particularly agree with. I think replacement costs should be kept up because, if we put off, because of this up of special ed, if we put off buying technology for the district, that just means next year or the year after, we're gonna have to spend twice as much then. So it's not so much discretionary as it's something that we don't have to buy. It's just that it's putting it off to a later date.
To go with your analogy, though, some people just always drive old cars. And there's different, philosophies. Like, if you live in California, if your car has a dent in it, whoa, that's not right.
Right.
But around here, your car's gonna be rusty. And so there's gonna be different philosophies about, I think that's where Nikki's coming from, that's what I was reading into it, is that, each town we may not all share the same philosophy about the role technology is gonna play in our kids' education.
But
And that's what
regardless,
makes
though-
it discretionary.
Regardless, though, that technology is required by state regulations because of testing. So if the technology no longer works,
Not all of it.
not all the technology, no.
And
So-
that's the discretionary.
So
part.
that's the discretionary part in which that, do teachers need the state-of-the-art smartphones?
Exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
there was more to Larry's presentation that I was really keen on, and that was the fact that, please interrupt, Larry, if I'm not portraying your presentation correctly, but we're gonna take what was kind of an as-need basis system in the satellite districts and bring it to the world of SU assessment, where we have a budgeted amount every year that we assess to districts every year, and we're not going to necessarily, that might not exactly mirror spending in a district
Yeah, so
that year.
my charge from David was to look at capital equipment the same way the SU board has done data communication, supplies, repairs and maintenance, much smaller numbers, but the percentages are the same. And every time in technology we've taken those things, zeroed them out of local budgets, we've seen savings ranging, efficiencies and savings year over year.
Yes.
Over a 4 or 5 year period.
Yes.
Ranging anywhere between 15 and 25% based on what it was. So for example, if supplies, every school was spending, I think it was like 15,000, we brought it to SU, now it's 10,000 over a period of years, to be able to get the number down. So my goal long-term, not year to year, was seeing if we could bring the total number down, since capital equipment was the biggest number, and the budget I proposed to the budget committee was that it would be down in year one by 10% in 1 year, the biggest number. So almost 22,000, I don't know the exact number on me, down in 1 year. If I could do that, I can't make any promises obviously, but if I'm buying fewer things, by rearranging things the same way we do, whether it's a projector bulb or a printer toner, if we do the same thing with laptops, why can't we do the same thing? And if we can, we bring the total number down, which is what my goal was. Rather than if we take it out of the SU, that's your decision as SU board. If you want to do that, then it's going to go to each local board. The principals will decide, and so in that instance, Heartland would be roughly the same. It's based on what the principals have asked for. Weathersfields would be up a fair amount because last year went from 20 to 10, and then Windsor's would be up, a lot if we brought it back. I should say Mount Scotty would be up a lot if we brought it back to the local budgets. The total number would go up. My goal is to take that total number and bring it down. And what you're seeing is the differences on how the assessment hits from where each district was in that first year. Again, in 2018, when you brought up supplies in 2013, nobody thinks back to 2013 what you spent individually on supplies, but I know, and I have those numbers. So that's what happened with supplies, repairs, and maintenance. With data communication, we used to spend 99,000, now we spend 76. I'm trying to bring the total number down. That's my charge, but I understand it's hard when you're dealing with assessments. whereas I'm looking at the total number.
Well, it's not hard for me.
I know.
I love the system, and so I would speak to supporting the, that expansion of the technology assessment.
Sarah?
So am I right that we don't yet have the sort of the offset number? And that we won't have that until we do the local budget? So in other words, we don't know what we're pulling out of the local budget to offset the increase here.
Yeah, I could, I gave that to the budget committee, and I think for Heartland,
It's about 65,000.
yeah, so
It's right here.
So in other,
In Harlan's situation, for example,
Heartland's is 64,250.
yeah,
I didn't change, that's the amount of spec, it's 38,000 for, so the total that Larry has that budgeted at the local school districts is 202. By bringing it to the SU, he's lowered it to 177. You can
Yeah.
take over.
so, I mean, the numbers, so here it shows an
That's good.
increase, here it shows an increase, it shows that Heartland's technology budget would go up by $69,000, but then when you take it out of our local budget, are you
Yes.
saying, in fact, our technology budget is only going up $5,000?
Yes.
That's a good way to look at it.
yes,
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
what I'm trying to
That's
say.
a good way to look at it.
That is hugely helpful to know that,
Yeah.
So if you put it back in the local budget,
right?
it was about a wash for Heartland, 5,000 out of an
Right.
$8 million budget, whatever you have.
Yes.
It's gonna be roughly a wash.
Okay.
Weathersfield, it would be
It's
less
up
of a
about
wash.
14,000, and quite frankly, Weathersfield, again, had they not cut that 10,000 last year, it would have been about
It would have been
4,000.
just like Heartland.
That would have been just like Heartland.
And
you know,
then
in terms
Mount
of the
Scottney,
increase.
because of where they were spending, if they had spent $1 instead of what they were spending, it goes down
Just
significantly. It would go up significantly if they put it back in their local.
Well, what I did here was I took what Larry said the local number, what the number was locally, so this number equals this number,
Yeah.
and then I used equalized pupil to break that out. And then over here, I took what it is that he's budgeted at the SU and did the same thing. So with this comparison, when you take the 177, Weathersfield's paying out 1,867 more, what Heartland's paying 5,598 less. And the Mount Scottney School District is paying $21,000 less. So we can make comparisons and, you know, all this stuff. But what happens is you tend to get confused because what this speaks to is that Larry, by putting it at the supervisory union, has decreased the overall equipment, technology equipment budget by 12.29%.
I think what Nikki was saying, and I think what Nikki's saying is very important, is that once we get, and maybe even this year, but certainly once we get by this year, the discretion around technology, all of the technology, will be at this board level, right? Because you will have zeroed everything out, and you will still be able to say, do we buy the state-of-the-art, boards, smart boards, or how do we do that? And that's gonna be decided here as it impacts down below.
Well,
The
it's not
problem
so
we've got in
much-
this transition year
Yeah.
is we're sort of doing things parallel. We're gonna be building your local budgets, zeroing out technology, and then what Nikki's saying is she would just like to reserve the right, that at the end, I mean, I don't think, given those numbers that you just said, Sarah, we've looked at, I don't think it's gonna make that much of a difference, quite frankly, because 5,000 or 10,000 is not gonna buy a teacher, it's not gonna buy, I think that's where we're gonna end up, but I think we can reserve that right and look at that at the end. Because I think what the SU staff has to be aware of, and I do as a superintendent, the more things we centralize, the longer we have to wait to make the final decision about what's gonna be in that budget, and what's not gonna be in that budget. I mean, it's part of the business of sort of centralizing, right? Because with
And my idea with this, and the reason that I am highlighting it, is that this is small potatoes in the grand scheme of things, as far as the amount of money that we're pouring into this. But as we continue to centralize, and we add more items that local budgets, we would have looked at as discretionary and said, we can't do that this year because we can't afford to, as we add more of that to the SU, and this is kind of feels like the first big addition to the SU budget. And so, this year, I don't think we're gonna go, if we do choose to do this, I don't think we're gonna go back and be like, no, sorry, I need to cut 500 from there. But big picture,
That's what
5
we're
years
gonna be
from
doing.
now, we may need to
That's what we'll be doing.
preliminarily approve the
Right.
SU budget and then
Absolutely.
say, okay, wait, I need to go back and look at that discretionary, because we can't do that.
In listening to Larry's explanation and understanding technology, coming back to this board and saying, we're not necessarily going to say, let's cut out this point. We're going to say, we really need to cut out $20,000 from this budget. And what's nice about being able to cut that $20,000 on this level, we then put it in the hands of someone like Larry, in which he knows what can be cut without impacting that with least impact instruction. So if our biggest goal is to have a one-on-one, he could make those decisions, so we could still keep that goal of one-on-one student technology, and we could say, well, we just won't upgrade this switch in Heartland and this switch in here, and let's borrow this. This teacher wants a new smart board in Wethersfield. There's a teacher in Windsor that no longer needs it. Let's move it from there to there. And so it's that being able to take a larger pot to mix and match technology, and you get more for your money. Besides the fact that, another good point that Larry made was that when students transport from one district to another, it's not unusual to have 10 students from Heartland go to Windsor or vice versa. With it centralized like this, they take those devices with them. So if 10 students move from Heartland to Windsor, Windsor doesn't have to buy 10 new devices.
And teachers.
Those students take them with them. And that is really a balancing out of spending, so individual schools won't have to spend money that they don't have because of the transient population.
Yeah, the only other thing that I would add, right, that I do, get a little bit nervous on, right, is especially at a high school level, right, technology is not discretionary. And as they go on to college, it's not discretionary. So I just get nervous, right, when I hear it's going to be discretionary, right? I'm all for it, but I just get nervous when I hear that. I'm like, well, we don't believe in technology or no, right? It's needed, right? And if they're going somewhere outside of this school system, they need it. And that's just my
Well, if they
perspective.
need it inside the
Well, they
school
need it
system,
in, right, no, I know, right, I agree, Bill, but I just, right, I
Bill's gotta
just
get
don't,
his testing
I just,
done.
right, yeah, right, we need the testing done. I just get, right, nervous because it's, you need it. And it's
It's not
not,
that way about
right,
all of our school spending.
right, yeah,
so-
exactly, right, yeah,
But at
yeah.
some point, like, we need to trim and.
Right, exactly.
But I like the discussion that happened about looking at this as discretionary, because if we add another piece to the SU budget,
Yeah.
this sets the stage in which creates a mechanism for our towns, our school districts to come back and say, we have to cut something. And then it creates the mechanism where we can cut something.
And just so you know, because of the way the assessments shake out, just like budgeting, cutting things out of the budget, it comes back the same way. So for example, if the SU board decided at a future date, they wanted to take out 10,000 off the total number, it wouldn't be as if Heartland gets 10,000 back.
Right.
And you would have to cut out 35,000 for Heartland to get 10,000 back.
Right.
Just be aware of that.
Yeah.
It comes back, it's not one for one per district. It'd be like 44% for Mount Scotney and so on and so forth. So just be aware of that also. But those are all good points.
Is it okay, just something really quickly? I do think, though, that we need to keep in mind Sean's point about differences in philosophy, and I think that will come up, and I think that's part of it being discretionary, is that there may be on the board some different philosophies about how important the latest smart board actually is, or whether we'd rather invest that in a teacher who can use older technology but do something really cool with it.
But I
And
think-
so I think we have to make sure that our process, whatever it is, allows for, that we don't have a one-size-fits-all philosophy.
And the way Sean does it, with starting with principals, I think that's where the individual boards can really have control of that piece of meeting with the principals, so the principals know what the directions of the school is.
Yeah.
You know, if the board wants to really push technology, then the principal knows when they meet with Larry about what their goals are, that that's what the board wants.
Right.
If it isn't as important for that particular school, then that's what the principal can bring forward.
And speaking of the principals, it may not be this way forever, but there was great, when I sat down with all of them, there was great unanimity
Unanimity is a tough
among them
word.
about, we want to keep the student one-to-one going, we want to keep teachers up to date with the latest technology, and then, the other things, 3D printers and smart boards, interactive whiteboards for those that were going off. So it was surprising that, not surprising to me, because I sit with them in the admin meetings on Tuesdays, but I think maybe you'd be surprised that there is a lot of unanimity among them
But I don't think that
for now.
going this way will completely lose, that the local communities won't lose complete control.
Yeah, no,
Because it's the principals that start the process with Larry.
Absolutely, yeah, no, I think that's
Yeah.
the case.
To approve, you can always come back and revisit.
Are we ready to put it to a vote?
The whole thing?
What's the,
The technology piece first, right?
Well, you could
The
take
whole
it
thing.
piece by piece, you could take it as what you've got here is basically the complete, draft budget with the assessments. You could do it you could do the vote with some sort of a clause in the vote that reserved the right to come back and revisit this in December, and at least the discretionary pieces of this. Yeah, either way.
I make a motion to vote with a, what would you call it, caveat, that we reserve the
Yeah,
right
reserve the right.
to come,
Vote to approve the budget and reserve the right
right, to look at discretionary
spending
spending in December.
in December. Yeah. I think that's a good motion. Did you get that, Diane?
Yes, it is, but what's the total budget?
The total budget is, total SU budget is it 4,901,000, Ed? Well, we'll just get those totals here. That probably would be good to have a number in there. Diane's right, she's used to doing this.
4,359,764.
Ed's got it right up there, 4,359,764.
Why is that different from the 4901?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Why is it different from the 2020 assessment comparison right above that? 4,901,000.
Because I didn't put in there, because the funds, you're voting on the SU budget. The SU budget, I could put it all together, but what I was looking at were the funds that are different funds,
Okay,
so that's why it's different. So early childhood is a different fund from the, so that you're voting on the early childhood budget and you're voting on the SU budget. So
okay.
that's why there's a difference.
I mean, you could put it all together, I mean, because it is one,
Yeah.
it's,
I thought that's what we're doing.
yeah, let's put it all together. I think that's easier to understand, because even though they're different funds, it's one budget you're approving that then translates to assessments to your individual towns. And what we're gonna do in this,
There it is, right there, Heidi.
4,901,737?
Yeah.
do you have that, Diane?
That's what we have on.
Okay,
4,901,737.
okay,
And-
thank you.
And then what we're gonna do this month, right, we said, we're not gonna carousel the next couple of months, we said that to every board. We will probably need an SU meeting, though, in December, which would be this group right here. But I think our board meetings should be separate in our own buildings, concentrating on local budgets, and then we come back, it wouldn't have to be the beginning of December, it could be middle of December, or the end of December, when we're ready, and we've got an idea of the impact on our local budgets, and then see if there's anything discretionary that we could alter at that point. I think it's gonna drive Ed crazy in terms of trying to get this all organized, but I think we'll be all right. Because now we've got at least a number to put into your budgets, to then see where that, and the truth is, we really don't know, because until we get the tax, the tax implications for each individual town, but that's another.
So Bill made a motion, did somebody second? Nikki seconded. Is there any further discussion? Sean?
Because of the nature of our carousel meetings now, a portion of the Weathersfield meeting that was supposed to deal with the reports from the SU Budget Committee and talking about the SU budget, we didn't get to that, and we're going to get to it when we go back. So I don't really know how my fellow Weathersfielders are feeling about this, and I will tell you how I feel about it right off the bat. The special education assessment is clearly understandable to me, that there are more IEPs, and it keeps happening, and so I don't have further questions about that. I don't know how my fellow Weathersfielders feel about the technology assessment, given that it's going to be something we will have to explain a $52,000 increase at this level, and I'm not sure how that squares with what we spend and how that would look for us. So I'm not sure how to vote about that. And on the central office assessment, I still have reservations about adding the permanent employee that was supposed to be temporary. So
My understanding was that we were voting on the budget, including that position for the next year. So this individual, do they have a yearly contract?
No, they have a contract just like everyone else in the office. And I have a job description here.
Expires in
You guys
June.
had asked for it.
Expires in June. Yeah, the
So I
contract.
wanted to know, Jack,
Right.
what is it that you want me to provide you with in order for you to feel more comfortable with that? Because I have a presentation that I went over earlier with the budget committee that, I don't know if you were there.
I guess my thing is that as an SU and as a superintendent.
Correct.
If we found that that position was no longer working for us and we got rid of the position, that would mean that the person would not be offered a contract.
That's correct.
For the following year.
That's correct.
So this is
That's
not
correct.
necessarily a permanent position per se. We can always decide not to have that.
As we can with every position.
As we can with every position, that's
Yeah.
right.
And there are some offsets within the office,
But I already spoke about those.
yeah, that we don't have to talk about in detail here tonight, but there's some ways in which Karen and I are talking about sharing personnel that is going to impact a little bit of a lesser cost for this person, but I understand, I mean, it's,
So just for you, Sean, here, I got FY05, we had 6 employees at the SU office. We had a total budget of $328,995. And we had number of payroll people that we handled was 13. In FY19, we have 4 FTEs at the SU. We have a total budget of $389,000 for those 4 people, and we do 350 people in payroll. And in addition to that, we're self-insured, so we're responsible for all the, and you'll see in that paper, all of the American Affordable Care Act has put all of the responsibilities for administering the program back on us, not the private insurers. So what's happened is we've encountered a vast network of requirements from the state and the federal level that is almost impossible to keep up with at our current staffing levels. Any other questions?
yeah.
I do. Ed, you threw out a figure that I heard earlier of 36,000 for this
Right. So what David spoke to was the fact that we added a position,
Right.
but we adjusted our total staffing at the SU office, and we were able to realize a savings that could be applied to the increase. So the overall increase is around $36,000. And then the other increases that you're seeing at the supervisory union office is due to the same that you see at all the other places, which is healthcare, normal increases in wages and things of that nature. So from 5 to 19, we've averaged an increase of 2%. And the payroll's gone up by 2,592%. And
Historically, Sean, payroll was done at the local building.
Right, so when we brought in special education, we took in a great deal. I think Karen said today there's 42
41
paraprofessionals and another
14 case managers and multiple.
15 or 16 teachers, and then there's SLPs, and there's all kinds of other people. So on a daily basis, we have at least 2 or 3 employees coming through with questions regarding payroll or their benefits or changes that they want to make, and we never experienced that before.
I guess the basis of my question is that you brought this to us a month ago. This was brought as a temporary position
But
that
that
was
wasn't
required
I wanted
to
that
get us
not to
through.
be temporary.
But that's how it was presented.
Okay.
And a month later, after we, a bare bones minimum of the members of this board approved that, and some abstained, that a month later it's become a permanent position and
Proposed.
I see what you're saying, but we could have had a more robust and less rushed conversation about it if it was brought as a permanent position in the first place.
I think the confusion might be too, Sean, that when, and I was the one that did most of the talking in terms of bringing the position forward for this year, and what I was trying to do was to try to show a temporary way we were going to pay for this employee, right? Because we didn't have that position budgeted for this year. So that's when I said, here's what we have on the balance sheet, this is what we could do to, and maybe either I misspoke or I didn't get it across that temporary in the sense that that's how we were going to fund this position for this year, so that we wouldn't have to go back and assess you more than you had already been assessed. I didn't mean to imply that this was a position that could then go away in June, because I knew that, you know, we've been swamped with all the, you know, financial transitions and with all of the increase in employees of it. So I'm sorry if I misspoke, and we did talk, this report, and even at the last board meeting, we did talk in a little more detail about the position and the permanency of that position. Yeah, so I mean, I know what goes on in that business office. We also did a little survey around the surrounding areas, Woodstock, Hartford, you know, Springfield, and we kind of looked at the number of people in the business offices, and again, it seemed like, you know, we for the number of people we were serving and the payroll that we were doing internally, we were short-staffed by at least one. And so and we try to look for a cost offset because the position doesn't cost $36,000, but we've made some shifting in the office to help it get that. Position's probably going to cost, with salary and benefits, closer to 60 or 70, twice that, basically, but
No, it'll cost around 40.
40 with benefits? Well,
Scott?
then it's a better offset than Ed, because I've got 25 to give you.
So, thank you. So in regards to the temporary nature of the spending, I remember that too, and it actually, I think that's worth like reminding ourselves, because we would want it to be temporary. Because as I remember, that spending was initially earmarked for, and okayed by the SU board for the software expenditure that went along with
That was for this year, right, the conversion.
the conversion to the new system. And then the state pulled the rug out of that procedure, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And recommended going with another, I don't know, 1,000 or 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 1,000 or
Vendor, right.
vendor for the software. And so, as is, and in my mind, the nature of budgets and even school board work, we okayed some money that did not get spent in that time. That was $165,000.
$135,000. And that's what left that on the balance sheet.
That left that on the balance sheet, and I bring this up because I remember at the time that it didn't actually please me that it was so easy to slide that use of that $135,000. But I'm only saying that in passing just because, to illustrate the point tonight, that I'm glad that, Dr. Baker, that you're still referring to it as a temporary source of funding for 2020.
That's correct.
Because that, it should be noted as that because it was originally supposed to be spent on something else.
That's correct.
And we decided as a board to change that. So we'll revisit that as a board, the source of the funding, or maybe we won't, but you'll,
No, I think,
next year, next budget.
yeah, well, I think for next year, the way we're paying for it this year is exactly the way you described. And because we didn't want to, because we're going to move forward with that position, or propose to move forward with that position, that's why it's in this budget that you have in front of you right now. That's the difference, but
So
yeah.
I appreciate you calling, I appreciate it being referred to as
Right, temporary this year,
source of-
correct. That was the way it was presented.
And other than that, and it's just like a normal budget process of trust and understanding that it's just a budget.
Sean?
I have a procedural question. A lot of my concern here is because our board has not, I feel that we cast a vote here without having received guidance from the Weathersfield board. This is hard for me to do. I wonder if I can ask for a recess, given that our whole board is here and have been party to this conversation tonight. If we are going to go ahead and vote tonight, I would ask for a recess for our board to discuss the budget.
We recess till
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, we could do that.
Before we recess, could I ask?
Because we don't have much else on the agenda tonight but this. I mean, it's really, this was the biggest piece of the agenda tonight.
Would including this under the discretionary spending that the motion referred to make, this might be something to talk to your board about, make the board feel better? That both the technology and this new position, or the new funding for this existing position is sort of what
It might
you.
amount to an amendment of
Right, there, yeah.
resolution, so maybe we should just recess it.
Whatever, anyway, I'm just posing that question, whether having both of those things be discretionary in the sense that then we go back would help. I'm wondering that myself, so I'll just throw that out there.
Can we recess for 10 minutes and come back?
We should come back at 8:30, I think, yeah. And to Sarah's point, I think, if I understood what Nikki said, is, again, given discretionary spending, I mean, I think a new position, I mean, it can be discretionary. I mean, we don't offer contracts till March, what I'm telling you is the business office is barely gonna survive without this. It probably won't. I mean, we've got people already that are saying, I just can't do it. So, I mean, I wouldn't be before you if I didn't believe that, but we could revisit that again in December as part of the discretionary piece. And I think certainly Ed and I will continue to advocate as strongly as we can for it. But if you want to talk to your boards, let's do it now, all right?
Before we adjourn,
Recess?
Recess. If anybody has policies that they want to bring back to me, we were supposed to revisit those today.
Sorry.
If you do, great. If you don't, here's your reminder to get them.
I've been good, I'm getting mine in.
It looks better than yours, but only because
Hey, give it to Diane,
I'll
you're good.
say,
But I feel like
it got shoved in bags. Actually,
You wanted, there's a room right across the hall, but you don't have to go all the way back down. Yeah. You don't have to go all the way
I'm
back
gonna
down
do it
there.
tonight. I'm gonna-
There's a room right here too, you don't have to go all the way back on that line.
I think it's going back.
There we go.
It's never easy though. This is my first SU. Most of my time has been in single districts. So the last 7 years have been quite a ride.
It's complicated.
Because it's kind of like, you know, it's that balance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you had to pick a way to govern, this wouldn't be the way.
This wouldn't be the way.
You know what I mean? It's like,
No, no, no.
yeah, like, I've often described it to people as, I have like, all the responsibility, but literally almost no authority, right, to kind of line it up.
Just say, this is how we're gonna do it, yeah.
Because if we were a single district, principals wouldn't be, you'd be interacting with, I would have already done my work with them.
Absolutely,
You'd have been
yeah.
interacting with me, we'd be setting a tax rate,
Yeah.
and life would be good. But it's almost like you have these 4 things going on at once, right?
And different philosophies and
Yeah.
different priorities and
Right,
different
exactly.
things, and no, it's complex.
It
And
just gets really complicated.
yeah, and there, I mean, I think there's some really good things about it, and there's some really terrible things about it. You know,
Exactly.
It's a mixed bag.
Exactly. This is why I didn't want to be the first one. But you had to get it. You know what I mean? If I knew that, if we could have waited and budgeted for it just you can't make it up. I hear you. I hear you. Well, I think that we've got clear that they come back in December.
Yes.
I like this process.
He just needed to come with this. But we just, I think the last meeting, we had to go wherever the job description.
At night.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and so
I would hope that.
I think he was in the last one, but he's still trying to catch up.
So I think to Sherry's point, right, I'll make a statement as the budget officials in the we're just giving everybody. And I even think some additional data can be shared tonight is new hire.
We recommend something. What it is.
Is this Amanda's
No, by
sister?
the end of this year, we're hoping
No,
to.
but there's nothing, no, she's on the part.
You do it. You getting tired, Nancy? Just stick around, we're gonna be voting here in a minute. And by the way, once this is over, it's over. So we don't have a lot else on this agenda.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we'll get done by then.
Oh, yes.
Where's he? Cumberland Farm? Yeah. I see him all the time.
I know, Windsor
They're
doing
gonna, no, they're gonna do a separate resolution when the school's.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Okay.
And a Scotty, the one we've got is the one that we're gonna, Elizabeth's gonna sign on behalf of the Scotland School District.
Oh, okay.
So now, the other two wanna do separate resolutions.
Now, what about the
No, they're not gonna do it. We're not even gonna do it.
Okay, so.
So it's just Windsor, West Windsor.
Oh, okay, well, that's easy.
That's easy, huh?
Very easy.
Yeah, so the idea is to go back and.
It's so complicated. I'm just glad that I'm totally trust. Now, I'm going to go find some water.
Some water, right out here.
Yeah, we've spent a lot of, everything we've done in the past 5 years.
Has come from VSBA one at a time.
Yeah, exactly, and it's the recommended, we're recommended one. Looking at the policies, the recommended one. No, we're not behind. Yeah, we're not behind. We're just not behind. I got policies and procedures that make no sense.
Hey, Nicole.
No, I mean, it's not
Yeah,
like.
so it's the stuff that I.
Exactly. And now the years passed, and now it's new because you couldn't pay it anymore. Like, okay. It might be a little different. But that conversion's gonna
And
help.
then I'm pulling in paperwork out last week when I was just looking at
I know they don't do
So we are reviewing it.
So we did say, okay,
Careful, you don't trip over.
it was the tables.
All right, let me pull it up. All right, so.
We had a great conversation. But I wish, I would have been fun to have in purpose.
Is that, oh, that's it. Maybe that's the same one.
I poked your
Okay.
thing.
You poked my thing, okay.
She wanted Tuesday.
Yep.
Nikki.
Wait, I have to go. Edit. It's like I still am getting used to typing on.
The day of the week.
Okay, Tuesday, November 27th, 6 p.m. Cafetorium? Is that, that's funny.
I just threw it in there.
All
I don't know.
Should we call it the I think it's technically the all-purpose room.
Okay.
I mean, I
Yeah,
like
do the
cafetorium
technical.
better, but. The cafegimatorium, I like it.
Yeah, if you leave Jim out, it's wrong.
The Heartland School Board, okay. So the thing we needed to add is down here, right? We're not gonna do it there. Where's my little, there it is. So, what did we say? It was other, we hope to surface other interests, concerns,
Identify.
We hope to identify, excellent. That's too big, we can fix that. We hope to identify.
And I don't know if you want to,
Oh, we were gonna change the language there, weren't we? What was, Scott had said ensuring a wide range of learners are engaged in our programs.
I checked with it.
I wrote down,
I just wanted to see who she might have.
Okay.
But I have two options. It's if I just have the first name, I don't have the last name. Graduation 2016.
I think for that 4, I think to kind of stay in the same wording with the other.
Yep. So
You'd
identify.
start with identify.
Identify, okay.
I'm not tied to that, I just,
Nope, that makes a lot of sense. So identify.
To me, it stands out.
Other priorities, comma, ideas, comma, what do you think? I mean,
additional, identify additional.
Everybody here, Weathersfield based?
I mean, I like the idea of like ideas, wish list items,
Can't you control them?
concerns. I think we want kind of anything, right? So like,
Concerns and
so ideas, concerns,
additional passions and concerns. I've used that language before. I don't know if
additional
I wanted to
ideas,
say it again.
concerns, passions.
Well, I'd said it here, but I don't know if that's too repetitive. Give school board.
Oh yeah, what passions and concerns rise to the top? Right, we already have concerns there, absolutely. So what was the? I mean, I'm just trying to think now. What was it that people felt like wasn't in there? It was just opening it up to other ideas so that people can come to the table with anything that they want to talk about.
Yeah, I think it.
So
So she works.
identify additional ideas, wish list items. I sort of like the idea of like this wish, Could do
She's a big
wish list items.
She is a para now. She can head over to a special ed para maybe.
Desired opportunities.
Well, so there's a resignation or
Gold town status, and the money will be distributed among our 2 towns.
so.
Yeah, I knew that.
It comes from my brain, it's not. I didn't
Isn't
sleep
that
last
nice?
night.
Opportunities, I think, is a good word.
Thank you.
And opportunities. How does that sound?
Already, they'll be distributed among the 2 There you go.
Identify additional ideas
Well,
versus
I
things
think they're near the,
that are community,
when they got into the building.
desired by our community.
As I knew, it was a mess. You know, like it would be the north face with the back
That looks
wall
good to me.
where the cooler was.
Yep.
So it was the back wall of the cooler.
Yeah.
Providing
We have training on December 13th. I will have
equitable,
special educators to be ready to have.
I just wrote down equitable.
Yes, hold on, let me fix that, let me just fix this and get it the right.
No, they'll probably be working in the office solution.
All right, I don't know how to use this on this iPad yet. Okay. All right, so we were gonna say, providing
Equitable academic programs for learners,
for all learners.
for all learners.
Good, strong,
So I'm bringing it
Equitable.
down to a single student. I got
Academic program. I think academic programs is important because that identifies.
Nelson,
It does.
Amanda Nelson.
Equitable
I think wide range of.
academic programs for all learners. For all learners. Okay, I think that's good. And that gets,
Period.
yeah, and that gets at,
Oh, I know, because
yeah, I
Yeah,
think
and
that's
Kit
it.
simplifies it. Or
Yeah.
doesn't, there's no,
All right, so I think this is good. Right? I think it's good. So the question is, how and where can we pass it out tomorrow? Laura said we really can't have it like in the room where people come to vote for some reason. I mean, it could be like,
she said it could be on a table.
it could be on the table, but we
She
can't
just doesn't
pass
want
it
us
out. Yeah.
in there mucking things up.
Exactly. Okay, so
Talking to people, she didn't want us talking to them.
exactly. Can't talk to anybody. Right? No,
Going in
we're.
there and talk to her, talk to other people.
I mean, you can, yes, but you can't, as a poll worker, you can't
Look at her.
You're just gonna start talking. Because you're working the
She's gonna
polls,
look at
right?
me.
Every time
You're working the polls, right?
It's like 2 hours past
The kids are I'm gonna try to see if the kids are interested. Alec will do it, Nicole is a little nervous, it sounds like, but
Wait,
after
there's school,
school.
oh, after school, I was like, wait, there's school tomorrow, right?
Well, the times I really thought would be good to hit are like before and after. The problem is printing. I don't know.
I know, that's because I mean, I could print 20, but we don't have a great printer at home.
What time are you gonna be there tomorrow?
So I
And
have
you're not
to,
gonna be there at 7.
that's
I'm
not
not gonna be
right.
there at 7. I have to, I'm showing somebody the
No,
apartment.
we're just talking about
at
as of
8. I'm dropping the kids, showing the
Okay.
apartment, and then going right to Damon Hall at 8:20.
How can I get up at lunch? I
So.
mean, I could print some.
Oh, I
but
could
I'm
go
not
home.
We could ask
Had everybody
Christine,
asleep,
we could ask
so.
Christine, I mean, I think,
I'm sure when I get
I
home.
don't think it's the end of the world if they're not there tomorrow, because I mean, people tend to go and vote, get out, you know, they're in a rush, I think it would be great to have them in Damon Hall, though, and I think we've gotta get them on the
Don't do
listserv,
that. Soon enough, there will be no
and
bedtime.
hang it up at the diner, and hang it up, you know.
Soon enough, there will be no more
And
playing
you
this
know
bed.
what we should do, actually?
Get it
They'll
on
be
the
going, like, I'm
listserv.
saying,
We should
when
get
they
it
get
on the
older.
board at
They'll be
Damon
going to
Hall.
bed after you do.
Yes.
We should get it on the board, and in order to do that, you have
My
to
daughter,
get
it's
in
like
touch
midnight. I'm like, what are you
with
doing?
probably Laura or someone, and
So I'm cleaning
reserve
my
it,
room. I'm
and
making
there's
my
a
lunch.
key, as I remember. So let me make myself a note.
I can send her a
I'm on
note.
2 different ends.
I want to do that, that would be, just like, could we reserve it for, I would say the week before the forum.
Teenage
So,
daughter
we
downstairs.
could reserve it, it's a
Football
whole
team,
process, I used to do it all the time for when I was on the nursery school board.
You only have
So
the
it's
one
like,
thing.
okay, I
You only have the one thing, and you have
Paid
to.
any attention to.
I know. So it's
you
right
only
in front of
get
Damon Hall, but people read it. It's good. If you have something going on, you want to have it there because people read it.
I was so happy. I'm like, okay,
You do a big poster, yeah, and then as people turn left on Route 12, everybody sees it there.
So do we need to make it look different?
So, well, I don't think we can use that. I think we'll just have a poster. It'll just say like
Yeah, my
community forum to
Just one.
discuss
That's quarterback.
enrichment at
Camden.
something like that. And
No,
have a day.
he's not.
So we should do it the week
I knew
before
Trevor.
the
Camden
forums on
boy.
that.
Yeah.
That
There is,
Tuesday, we should like put it up the
he has
Tuesday.
a brother Camden boy, but it's a different Camden boy.
But
So,
we should first ask Laura if it's available and if we can get the key.
Oh, okay.
So I get confused when I read it, like.
Yeah, well, that's why I.
The stuff that Nikki showed will warn it, does that go into listserv?
That, not automatically, you kind of have to do a separate listserv. I mean, something goes up, but it doesn't get anyone's attention. So I'm happy to, if you want to do a separate, you know, just a listserv, please, you know, I think we want to really talk about, you have to go please come, we really want to hear from you all.
Just like you when he
Really
plays,
important.
like
This is
blind.
This is your time.
I've been talking, and I talked it up some with Turkey supper.
Yeah, but she's literally blind. So
Yeah, and
I'm
I'm
like,
gonna-
how do you
I have
know?
about
He's out there on the 50s, and you can see like this much, really?
Someone's dropping back.
You know, this is your this is the time to share.
Yes.
You know, count it in a way
Should come back to a hockey game.
Different. I mean, this is a different opportunity than,
Okay, Mom.
and it could make an impact.
Thank God it's an announcer.
Make it very.
You guys should have it.
No, it will, because it's coming up with her budget. What you hear is the sleeping that's going
Right.
to.
I mean, she's a new principal. This is kind of direct.
Some of them are playing in their jackets. And so none of the parents, they're like, what number's your kid?
Great.
What do you?
Cool, okay, so I think that's good. So should we ask,
And then they would do like.
so what's the next step? Let's
Oh, wait, no, that's your side.
let's be in touch tomorrow. I mean, I can just print out like
I
20
mean, I
copies,
can-
if you want to print out 20 copies, and we can have those at Dayton Hall.
Then they got different numbers.
We'll go, and then
My daughter
I'm so tired right now.
And I'm like, you're like, wait,
I can
If I can
go,
wake
I'm
up
not
tomorrow.
going in until noon.
I should play
I can
offense.
potentially go to Staples.
Yeah, or the school, they'll print it, just ask for Steve, so they can, when they can just print.
So we had to like cobble together they were watching.
Is she still here?
She is, yeah, she's back, she's
Get all
over
these
there.
kids wearing their teammates' siblings jerseys. And I was trying to coach them, like,
We're tired.
all right, stop. You, get over here. I don't know who you are anymore.
Thank you all for indulging Weathersfield while we caucused on that issue. Let's come back to order. Any further discussion?
Wait a minute.
So we have a motion, we have a second, right?
Yeah, just wondered where.
That's where we are.
Where you were jumping, right?
That's where we are. The motion is to approve the budget, subject to the caveat that we reserve the right to come back and revisit the discretionary items.
Have we written that?
Yes,
Diane
Diane's
wrote
got
it.
it.
Yes, I do have it.
Is it just like?
Yes, it was just like timing.
Heidi said.
Yep. just like
Okay.
Heidi
So we're resuming
said.
discussion?
Is there any further discussion?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I feel like it's necessary to caution us all that this reserving the right idea, although it sounds convenient in one night, it really steps away from our responsibility. And ultimately, that is for young people in our communities that by all measures need an education system that is nimble. And if an SU board that has an increasing responsibility, we have seen tonight, can't come to conclusion, definitively and trust our leaders to, in this case, hire and or remove employees when it's time to do that, then we're perhaps outside of our realm of responsibility. So I would desire that we amend the motion so that it simply reads that we would like to, well, let's have a reading of the motion again, and let's basically remove the the part about discretionary spending, or that we would like the right to come back, because I don't think we, ever don't have that right as board members to talk to the superintendent or our own chairperson or board at a meeting, and B, we would of course expect them to be that responsive
So
on
what
their own.
Right. So what I'm hearing is
I just
Scott's making a motion to amend the original motion.
I'm offering an amendment.
Right, to eliminate the clause to return to the budget to review discretionary spending in December. He wants to take that out. And clearly, that offer of an amendment would need a second. So you would need to call for a second.
I second it.
Who seconded that?
I did.
Nancy? Okay. So now you would vote on the amendment first, which would be to remove the discretionary clause for December, and essentially then go back to the first motion.
Okay. So is there any further discussion before we vote on the amendment to remove the discretionary clause?
I would speak up again and just remind us all that we're not dictating this spending, and it's easy for these spending estimates that they are to go either way.
Thank you.
And the other thing I heard Scott say was, there's nothing that prevents the administration or the SU board, regardless of that motion or not, from revisiting, where we are in December or January or April, and I think that was the point Scott made. But motion and second on
Okay.
to amend is on the table.
Discussion?
Is there further discussion on the amendment?
Yeah, Scott, that the Weathersfield board is, I'm going to vote yes on this budget, but the reserving the right on technology was part of my charge from our board, so I'm going to vote against your amendment.
Any further discussion before we call the vote on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment to remove the discretionary spending clause from the original motion, please say aye.
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 All opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Any abstentions?
Sounds like the ayes have it. I mean, the...
Hand vote.
Let's do a hand vote.
Yeah, hand vote would be good.
Okay.
Those in favor of the motion?
Those in favor,
Amen.
please raise your hand.
Great.
3.
3.
Those opposed?
All right, so the amendment dies, basically.
Okay.
Any further discussion on the original motion? All in favor of approving the $4,901,737 SU budget with the caveat that we reserve the right to revisit discretionary spending further in the budget process, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Sounds like the ayes have it.
All right. Good job.
Thank you for the budget.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of work to that. Still a lot of work to go. Too.
Carousel discussion?
Yeah, so are we all in agreement? I think this can be real simple. Are we all in agreement that December we may need an SU budget, yeah, you can see where my head is, an SU meeting to do what we just voted on essentially, and if there's anything else that comes up, we'll certainly do it. But I don't think we need a carousel in December, all right? So, and I would like to stick with, I'd like to go back to, if it's just an SU meeting, maybe go back to our first, we used to meet the first Wednesday of every month. So I don't know what the first Wednesday in December is, but mark your calendar.
I think it's December 5th.
December
Yeah,
5th.
so if it's December 5th, are all of the individual schools going to be able to, go through their budget? Because I think that's, if we do right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's the point. If we do this December 5th, we're not going to come
So
back with any
we
discussion.
could push
on
that off
discretionary.
then a little bit later,
Yeah, I
right?
think we have to
Well,
push
you're
it
gonna
off.
have to have
We
a,
need
you're
to
gonna have to have a
have
tentative
meetings.
budget at the local level by mid-December anyhow. So
Right.
we could meet,
Well, that's what we're aiming for,
Right.
Right.
but we're not gonna have it in December.
no.
December
okay.
5th.
Right, that's my
Can I
point. We
ask
need to have
a
this
question
meeting after
in terms of the
those meetings.
budget process? If I give you an expenditure budget, are you going to wait for the tax rate then?
That's always an issue that comes up, because
Because if you are, then that's going to wait, that's going to push it out towards the end of the month.
toward the end of December, you mean?
Yeah, and
Right.
then we're going to run into the whole,
Holiday.
no, we're going to run into the getting it to the printers in order for it to be published in the town reports. So I'm just throwing that out there. I know that you want to see the expenditure budgets. Those can happen, very quickly. What I can't give you is a tax rate until I start getting numbers from the state. And if the state, if things follow the same pattern that they've been following, it could be a while. So I don't know what it's going to take to get the board as far as the discretionary part. If you want to see the tax rate, it could be a wait. There could be some time.
What is your estimated deadline for final?
For printing,
Yeah.
it's usually by mid-January at the latest,
But it's different for every school.
Right.
So in your case, it may be January 15th. In Windsor's, it could be the end of the.
Well, it's not Windsor anymore,
We're not
because here's the
Windsor.
beauty of the new Mount Scottney School District, we're printing our own report. So we'll go to a printer that works on our timeline, not on
Weathersfield,
their
I think
time.
Jean's already sent out an email saying that she wants her stuff.
Right, Jean goes to a different printer, and they
The
have
end
a
of the
certain
month, right?
deadline.
Yes, actually, the town's deadline was earlier than mine.
Do you know when they like to get that report?
Jean's is the end of this month.
End of November.
Well, no, that's to get the reports.
Just to get the reports in.
When does it have to go to the printer, do you know, Jean?
Yeah, I wasn't published by the town, but BJ is the trustee of public funds. So she got her letter, and I want to say it's the first week in December, like December
I think it's December 3rd.
4th or
Somewhere right
something.
there.
Yeah.
That's not gonna happen.
It's never gonna happen.
That makes sense.
Hey, we might have a
That's
good
what
budget
the
meeting, because
town-
we may not even have it, our budget in the report.
We've turned it.
That'd be easy.
I can chase that tomorrow and find that out with, I'll call,
Well, I can call the town clerk.
yeah, we can figure that out.
Yeah.
Find out when they need their information.
For the printer. That's, the key language there is for the printer.
Yes.
Everybody wants it 3 weeks before that, but,
Anyway.
right. But again, it's two districts we worry about now this year, because we're gonna be printing our own. Diane and I just talked about that today. We don't have to worry about the town report. It's not gonna go in the town report. So, there we go. One of the okay, so then, backing up what Ed just said, what we have done in the past is we've run the December numbers, the mid-December numbers, based on last year's tax worksheet, because we don't have, then at least you get an idea of what it would have been like, but you don't have your new CLA, you don't have the new tax worksheet, that's what Ed's talking about, until usually more toward the
You
end
don't
of
have
December.
equalized pupil, you don't have the new CLA.
Right,
You might not have
none of
the
that
base tax
stuff,
rate,
no.
you might not
So we'd have to
that.
use the old numbers, we'd have to use the old sheets, but that would give you a rough idea once we get there.
I don't hear
So then we'll push the SU meeting off till
all the time.
mid to end of December then? Yeah, what's the third Wednesday in December?
19.
Yeah. So let's look at the 19th for SU then, is that? All right, maybe works, so just so you know, if you want to write that down, 19th. Do we don't have a
We don't,
negotiations.
we're negotiating on Mondays.
So
Okay.
close to Christmas.
I know, it's crazy, I know. That's the other thing too, this budget just runs right into the holiday season, it's just nuts, but,
What time are we looking at?
for that, usually 6:30. 6, I think SU meetings were at 6.
No, they were at 6:30.
6:30, sorry,
Okay.
6:30. We haven't had one in so long, I forgot. We could do 6.
Can we do 6?
Yeah.
We could do 6, yeah,
Thank you, Nikki.
all right.
I'm not on my.
So 6, you want to write that down on your notes then? 6 o'clock on the 19th of December, SU board meeting.
Is that here?
And that's
Actually,
here.
at the office.
Actually, we've done it at the SU office. Let's do it at the SU office.
Okay.
Yeah. Then we don't have to bother a building. And then the board chairs will work with your own boards and Diane about the doodle polling, your regular meetings, or maybe you've already got your dates set up. But the only thing I would say is keep Ed and I in the loop, because we have to be at those meetings and we have to present what we've got. We're working with your principals right now. I think by the end,
What are the boards going to be doing?
so the boards, your individual boards, are gonna be working on, like, the Heartland local budget, on the Weathersfield local budget, on the Mount Scottney local budget. That's why Ed and I are working with the principals now to get the draft of those budgets together. And I would say in another couple of weeks, we'll have those. And then so I would say by end of November, early December, you could start meeting as an individual board and not worry about carousel or SU until the SU meets on the 19th. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Okay.
When do we resume carousel meetings, if we resume?
And then I think we'd revisit carousel meetings probably in February.
Let's do one in February and have a carousel discussion in February.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, let's have a carousel meeting in February. Good idea. I mean, we would not want to miss all this fun. Right? It's like, right?
Anything further about policies beyond?
Let's try to get a deadline of November 30th
Yeah, that's a good idea.
To get them all done.
to get them all done.
So the batch that some of us forgot to bring today, sorry, is that the last batch that we'll do, or is there another round?
Yeah, we did one swap. So
Okay.
each policy should get a first reading and a second reading.
Okay, great.
And that'll all go into a spreadsheet if you enter.
And Larry's got
it.
that spreadsheet.
Larry's system.
Yep, so just enter that in and then get
Enter it into
them,
Larry's email, and if you have any comments, like just document it
Yep.
in there, and it'll all be there, and then we can go through from there.
perfect.
And that might be the other thing we look at that December 19th SU meeting,
Yep.
right?
Okay.
Why are you looking like that?
Because I gotta do budgeting and.
I know.
And David,
Hey, you
I
can-
let Nikki know that the Windsor board has reviewed the pupil privacy
Correct.
rights. So
Correct.
she recommended I go in and put in our commentary based on the
All right,
survey.
good.
So we'll
Excellent.
go in and, just kind of say,
Excellent.
look
Good.
here, change this, do that,
Perfect.
whatever it is.
We do have to make those appointments tonight. Where are we on the agenda?
We're ready. I was just going to call for appointments and ready.
Okay, so we've got resignations of Paula Tracy, SLPA, and I don't know if you want to speak to that, Karen, or not, just that she resigned.
She resigned, she's moving to another career path, I think.
Okay, yeah. And then Stacy Knight was also paraprofessional, working for the supervisory union. So
Oh, that's good.
we could do the accept the resignations first, and then we'll do the new appointments.
Can they keep it by us?
Okay, is there a motion to accept the resignations?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion?
Yeah, I hate accepting Paula's resignation.
Yeah, Paula was good.
I know people who moved, I know a couple that moved to Weathersfield because she was great.
Yeah.
She worked with my grandchild.
So, I mean, God bless her to do what she wants to do in life, but we will miss her in Weathersfield, I know that. Good one.
Yeah, it's tough, and some of the frustration Karen has is what we can pay an SLP, because it's a speech language pathology assistant, right? So you can't pay them what you pay an SLP, but sometimes they're doing some of the similar work an SLP does. But again, we just spent the whole night talking about cost containment. It's not easy, you know? Yeah,
Paula did a great job for us.
We'll miss her, yeah.
Any further discussion? All in favor of accepting those resignations with regrets? Please say aye. Aye. Sounds like the ayes have it.
The ayes have it. So then we've got the two appointments.
Did you have Hannah's transfer, did you include Hannah's resignation so that she could take a job as a...
No, that's not.
See, I didn't even have one from her.
That's not on here yet. We never got which she's being transferred.
Hannah Claire.
Yeah, she's taking a job as a Spanish.
She's gonna teach Spanish here at Windsor, because there was an opening here and she wanted to.
Of course, this is what she wants to do.
And it's growth for her, so yeah, so we did it, but we didn't get we should probably get a formal letter from her at some point.
Okay, I can.
Because it was really an internal transfer, and we think about it that way.
Yes,
She's
that's
moving
right.
from Weathersfield to Windsor.
But she's still an employee.
But it's still an
Yeah,
employee,
but
right?
she's going
It's still
to
an-
Windsor to Windsor, so.
Que le vaya bien.
Yeah, and then the two appointments, Tina Canfield is the new, quote-unquote, temporary HR person in the office, working with Ed. She came with a lot of experience, some out of the public world, some out of the public service, but she's done a great job. She's been on the job for a couple of weeks, but this would be the official appointment of her. And then the other one is Aurora Paquette. Do you want to speak about Aurora Paquette? Is that one yours? Okay. Where is she, Diane? Where is,
She's a secretary at Heartland, I believe. Aurora taught cat.
Oh, Aurora, I thought you said Laura.
No,
I thought you
Who is
said
it?
Laura.
I'm thinking to myself, this has got to be a special ed parent.
No, it's Aurora. Aurora is a new, yes, she is
Thank you.
the new special ed parent at Heartland. And we also have another new person who will be bringing forward for Weathersfield to fulfill Hannah's spot.
Yes.
Next month.
Next month.
Right, yes, Aurora.
I thought this was Stump the Trumpet. I was going to be looking at that.
Who's that?
We've got a name on here. Who is going to own up to it? 'Cause I know she's not working for me. Well, she is technically. But, all right, we got it. right,
Is there a motion to make these appointments?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Motion to
The ayes
adjourn.
have it.
We don't need an executive session.
Okay. Do we have to talk about setting the next agenda?
I think we've got the next-
Budget.
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 The next SU, December 19th, budget, and maybe a little policy, much to Nikki's chagrin, but I think we're gonna have to do a little of that.
I move for adjournment,
Yeah, we promised Nancy.
Oh, yeah.
Look at that. We made it.
Look at that.
9 o'clock.
All right, all in
Well
favor?
done.
Aye.
Was there a second to adjourn?
Nikki.